This chapter is called Beatrice Scullion. We sat in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and a half-empty packet of chocolate digestives that I'd left out for the plumber earlier that afternoon. The newly discovered pile of documents still held together with what we now realised was a dirty piece of reddish ribbon sat next to Rachel on the table. Deep in thought, she absent-mindedly twisted one of the ends of ribbon with her fingers and looked up at me. "Digestive," I said, offering her the open packet. She took one, snapped it in 2, and put both pieces down on the table next to her coffee. "Beatrice Scullion," murmured Rachel under her breath, and she pursed her lips. "She was the lady who lived here before us," I offered. Rachel nodded, and I continued. "What did we learn today? That she was the daughter of the house steward at the old hall, the man who inherited Hallows house from the Pikes. Sylvester, was that his first name?" "Yes, Sylvester Scullion, but she was his niece, not his daughter," said Rachel, correcting me. After a pause, she continued. Pointing at the bundle of papers, she said, "I wonder how long this stuff has been hidden in that clock." "From the looks of it, quite a while," I answered. Rachel lifted one of the pieces of biscuit to her mouth, then paused and thought better of it. "I'm just trying to get my head around this, Mum," she said, tapping the biscuit half gently on the table. "I have a lot of information swirling around in my head from all the stuff I read this afternoon at the library." "Well, if it helps, let's start writing it down," I offered, getting up and grabbing a lined notebook and pen from the top of an unopened packing box, "before we open up this new pile of documents." "This new can of worms," said Rachel under her breath. She stopped tapping the biscuit and popped it into her mouth. "You know, Mum," she said, with a mouth full of biscuit, "we still haven't sorted out the problem with the clock." "Not necessarily. We might have jolted it into submission," I smiled. "Anyway, I can't understand how it was still making bonging sounds when it obviously hadn't been wound for ages." Rachel nodded in agreement, and then reached into her pocket and brought out her mobile phone. She fiddled with it for a second, and then turned it to face me. "This is the picture I took of the Alpheus Pike portrait in the library," she said. I looked, and she enlarged the digital image with 2 fingers. "See, the clock in the painting is definitely the same as ours." I took her phone and enlarged the image again myself, focusing in on the various details of the clock which stood behind the seated Alpheus Pike in the corner of the unknown room. Yes, the same square brass face, the carved lion head, the roses, everything, I said. "Which means," said Rachel, "that Sylvester Scullion must have inherited some or all of the contents of Hallows house from the Pikes, including this clock. And it's remained here ever since," I added. "And then, presumably, it was inherited by his niece, Beatrice. I wonder when she came to live here," she said. "These papers may offer us a clue," I suggested. "True," said Rachel. She paused and then picked up the second piece of biscuit. "Mum, was anything else left here? Other bits of old furniture, I mean, apart from the clock?" "No," I answered. "Well, I suppose all the old curtains and some of the light fittings were left behind, but that's it." "Why was the clock not removed?" asked Rachel. "Well, the executors of the estate, who I never met, asked me via my my solicitor whether I'd like to keep it. They said it was too old and heavy to move safely, so I said I didn't mind. With hindsight, if I'd known it was going to be so noisy, I'd have asked them to take it away. I laughed. Rachel smiled, and I took a sip of coffee and a bite of my own biscuit and picked up the lined pad in front of me. Rachel reached over and put the pile of bound papers on her lap. Okay, let's open this and find out what was so confidential that Beatrice Scullion had to stash it away in an old clock, she said. She tugged at both ends of the ribbon and it came undone. A couple of the papers fell to the floor and I reached down and picked them up. Old receipts, I said, passing them back to Rachel, for a blue Wilton carpet, 28 litres of white paint, and a dog kennel. She took them from me. That seemed like a lot of paint, she said. I suppose it depends on what you need to paint, I smiled. Rachel spent the next few minutes thumbing through the top pile of papers. Lots of old receipts, a number of invoices, old gas and electricity bills, old copies of TV licenses. Mum, this is all pretty standard stuff. I wouldn't call any of it confidential, she said. She put the first pile to one side and began to stand up. You know, I think Doreen's migraine is starting to rub off on me. I'm going to head to bed. I can look at this stuff tomorrow. It doesn't look very inspiring anyway, she said, bending over and giving me a quick goodnight peck on the cheek. All right, love, I won't be far behind you. Night-night, I said, picking up the empty cups and putting them in the sink. It must have been around 3:30 in the morning when I heard some light tapping on my bedroom door, followed by, Mum, Mum, are you awake? It was Rachel. I am now, I answered. Are you okay? I've had a weird dream again, and that light is back, she said. Light? I asked sleepily. The one coming from the old hall. Will you come and look? She asked. I sighed and drew back the bedquilt. It was chilly, so I put on my slippers and dressing gown. Rachel had gone back to her own bedroom. Look, she said as I entered the room. It's still there. I approached the window where she was sitting with her nose pressed against the pane and looked out. All I could see was darkness, the outline of the old building and some trees. Can you see it? She pleaded. Not really, Rach, I answered. Wait till your eyes get used to the dark, she said. You'll see it then. I pressed my own nose against the window pane and tried to concentrate. Still nothing. I pulled away from the window and turned to Rachel. Sorry, love, all I see is darkness, I said. She seemed upset. Then why can I see it? At least I could before. I don't know. Maybe it's the reflection of a streetlight or a car passing by, I reasoned. There are no streetlights or cars back there, Mum, that's ridiculous, she said, turning to face me. Okay, I don't know. Look, love, tell me about the dream, I said, and gently took her hand in mine. Oh, you're freezing, I added. She pulled her hand away from me and went to sit on her bed. I'm not a baby, she scowled. I know what I saw. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just tired and so are you. Tell me about the dream, I repeated. She remained silent for a moment, twisting a loose strand of her hair in her fingers, and then began. I was on the other side of our garden wall again, but this time it was night. The red gate was open, like it was the last time, and I walked through. There was snow on the ground, and I didn't have anything on my feet, but it was weird because I couldn't feel the cold. When I looked down, the reflection in the ice wasn't me. It was Elizabeth Pike. "Oh, love," I said, and went to sit next to her on the bed. "There's an explanation to all this. The fountain and the painting of Elizabeth Pike, it's all been on your mind after yesterday's visit to the library. That's all." "I know, you're probably right. It is spooky that it looks so much like her though, isn't it?" she said. "Not spooky, just a strange coincidence, that's all," I answered. "Don't worry about it. Look, you get back into bed and get more sleep. You look exhausted." She gave a large yawn and nodded. I went back to my own room, but it took me a long time to get back to sleep. I was starting to regret opening the door to that stranger on Halloween night. It was about 6:30 the following morning. I stood in the kitchen with an apron over my dressing gown. I had my sleeves rolled up, and I was looking down at a large brown and pink checked bowl full of flour and big pieces of butter. I heard Rachel coming down the stairs, and I looked over to witness a very groggy and dishevelled looking daughter throw herself on the comfy chair near the fire. She drew her knees up into the chair and hugged them, then looked up at me yawning. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm making pastry," I answered. "Why?" she said, yawning widely again and rubbing her eyes. "At this time in the morning?" "Well, I woke up early and I remembered I have to make a Bakewell tart," I said. She rubbed her eyes again in disbelief. "What?" she said. "Why?" I laughed. "I forgot to tell you last night. I bumped into our neighbour yesterday from number 7 and invited him round for tea and cake," I said. "And you have to make a Bakewell tart," she said. "Well, yes, it's what he asked for," I answered. "He specifically asked for a Bakewell tart," she said. "He did," I answered again, brushing flour off my fingers. Rachel hauled herself up off the comfy chair and turned towards me. "I'm going up to get a shower. What time is Bakewell tart man coming round?" she asked. I laughed. "Not till this afternoon. He said about 3, I replied. "Anyway, how are you feeling this morning?" I added. "Rough," she said, and wandered slowly out of the room. Rachel stayed upstairs for the rest of the morning. I noticed that she'd taken with her her shopping bag with the stranger's parcel of documents in it, plus Beatrice Scullion's bag of confidential papers and my pen and lined notebook. After I'd had my shower and got dressed, I popped my head into her door to see if she wanted a drink. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, her hair piled up in an untidy bun, with various papers and documents strewn around her. Some of them were in different piles on the floor, and she was making copious notes and lists in the notebook. She put her pen down and looked up at me. Yes, cup of tea, please," she said, answering my question. "And a bit of toast," she added. "It's nearly lunchtime," I said. "I'm saving myself for the Bakewell tart later," she said, grinning. "Okay, tea and toast coming up, madam," I said, and made a little mock curtsy. She ignored my playful sarcasm and gave me an absent-minded "Thanks, Mum," and carried on sifting through a pile of papers. I was halfway down the stairs when she suddenly shouted out to me, "Mum, come back, look at this." I walked back into her bedroom. She was holding up a small brass key in one hand and pointing to it with the other. "This was taped to the back of a photograph," she said. "It's from Beatrice Pike's pile of documents." "A photograph?" I said. "Yeah, there's a few of them. all black and white, and a couple of postcards, all stuffed in the middle of Beatrice's pile of boring receipts and household bills, she answered. Another key, though. That's curious, I said. Any idea what it's for? Well, she said, I think it might be connected with our garden gate key, the key that the stranger left us. I've left it downstairs on the kitchen table, but I think it had the number 3 on it, didn't it? This little key has the same E and J Pike inscription on it too, in tiny writing, but the number is 1. The plot thickens, I said, smiling. Yeah, said Rachel, but look at the photo that the key was attached to, Mum. She handed me an old sepia-coloured photograph. It was of a large, detached Victorian building, with an indecipherable sign over its grand front door. Look on the back, instructed Rachel. I turned the photograph over and scanned the handwritten inscription. The 5 Keys Hotel, King Street, Monk's Ferry, I said, reading out loud. Mum, Elizabeth Pike was holding a set of 5 brass keys in the painting, remember, said Rachel. This is all connected in some way. It must be. We have keys 1 and 3, so there must be more somewhere. Well, I suppose so, I said. But is any of this relevant to Elizabeth Pike's murder, Rachel? We won't know until we put it all together, Mum, she answered with irritation in her tone. She picked up a pile of papers and thrust them towards me. It must all link together, Mum. It must. And that ends chapter 5 of my ghost story, Hallows House. I hope you'll join me again for the 6th part. This has been Kate, a Library of Whispers, saying I shall see you very soon.